Okay, so I took a look at the notes you gave me in the email and I've scanned through it one time. Now let's get to work on this really nice, really big search. I understand you got a couple of no's and we're going to get into that. And understand that you didn't find everything. We're going to get into that too. Some of it I will let you off the hook on. Some of the others, I think that there was some things we could do different. Now here's the big one. Here's the hitch and the giddy up and the first no, as it were. And it's right there. So this right in the very beginning, the very first question I have for you, and I can't remember if I've asked it of you before, and that is, what is your alert behavior? What is it that you pay for? Does your dog know what it needs to do before you call alert? And there's more to it than that. There's more than just that final physical position, which is often that trained finish if you get into that kind of a thing, which I do. There's all that pre-finish stuff. There's the increased interest, the swinging of the body, squaring of the hips, all that kind of stuff that goes with it. And so I would ask you to start to look at and think about, what is it that you pay for? What is it that you need to see from your dog before you're convinced? And sometimes it surprises me that dogs at even really high levels, their teams have never really contemplated it specifically what it is that they do pay for. And it can vary depending on whether or not the hide placement is low or high or deep inaccessible or whatever. And it's important that you do know that, because it's important to know the difference between when your dog is interested in something and when they're in target odor. We know that there are no other odors in the area. This isn't fringe. It's not like the dog was on the edges of odor or anything like that. It's not like there was odor inside this can blowing like this and you were just on the wrong place. No, the dog was just interested in the odors that are inherent within a waste bin. So, I would encourage you to set up some training scenarios that allow you an opportunity to get a real clear definition of what is it that your dog looks like when it's interested in something as opposed to when it's in target odor. And maintaining with that theme, when we take a look at this, I'm going to try to do a really good job of trying to see if I can tell what you pay for. And I think largely what you're paying for is you see that the dog is very interested. And then during that time, there you go, you got a nice yes. And during that time, you see that the dog is really interested. And then you sort of kind of toss it up and go, okay, well, the dog is really interested. I'm going to go ahead and call it. But is there also maybe a look back or some other thing that's happening really subtly that, tips the scales for you in your favor? So, for example, we just had the dog looking interested in a table, but we don't call that, right? So there's some interest, some checking back, looking at you, and you don't call it, thankfully, and good job. And I would agree, because, there was no real heavy intensity of that. There we go again with some more interest, but we don't call that. So, and you may know very well clear exactly what it is that you pay for. I'm just pointing it out because if, this sudden change in behavior that we see here is enough, then maybe it shouldn't be. Right, there we go. Okay, so something to think about. And, certainly feel free to get back to me and let me know, if you have a nice, clear understanding of that you could help me understand. Okay, moving on. Well, sort of kind of moving on. Really quickly, I just want to mention this really quick. I know personally as a handler, I know that there's no way I could leave this area behind and feeling like it was thoroughly searched. Because there are large portions of the room that just didn't get checked. We never really get a good nose on this table, right? On this next table, we only get sort of this back portion. And I want to say we only get a portion of the other table as well. Here's an example of interest again with no finish, which is good. It was a good call. Yeah, so we don't get that whole table either, so I guess what I'm saying specifically is if there was odor on these chairs over here, you would have missed it. So personally, I would not have felt comfortable leaving that room and saying that it was searched. Strategically speaking, generally what I like to do is whatever is behind me is cleared. That way I don't have to remember to get there or hope that I have enough time to get back there. So, doing that perimeter thing was totally good. If all this up in here is play, I feel like I would have had to grab that really quick before I ever left that section of the room. I would have eliminated this. I would have eliminated this. I would have eliminated the other table and any other hard elements or elements that appeared to be valuable or that may secrete odor. I'm going to check all of that before I leave the room. And I do know that you do end up coming back in here and not beneficially. So, all those cans, I would have wanted to feel good about that before I left. And then that room would be dead to me, essentially, is what I'm saying. So we do pretty good in this lobby area. I believe that you explained to me that there was something behind that water fountain and also the doorstop to the men's room. So let's look at the finished behavior here. So lots of interest, lots of sourcing and bracketing. I will say this, what you just did there is not uncommon. I see it all the time. But where you are physically right now is probably where I would have encouraged you to stay. So you see the interest, and you can see the interest very well from right there. But it is by swinging around front, and then you even go to look underneath of the table. I'm not sure what you expected to see. There's some look back. There's some more hunting. Do we get another look back? There's some more hunting. Another look back. Okay, so maybe it was just through your concerns from the previous no that maybe you weren't 100% sure of that, which reiterates my question of what is it that you're hoping to see? And by the way, once you sort of come to a decision on that, it can help you a lot because you can shape it. If let's say if you were to dabble in the trained finished behavior world, you can shape that finished behavior such that when the dog is as close to source as it anticipates that it can be, then it displays, X behavior. And you can shape that, and it can be really, really helpful to have such a demonstrative finish. Of course, there's a lot of deep water that goes into that training too, but just the idea of contemplating it and thinking deeply about what is it that I pay for? Is it what I want to be paying for? And can I shape that to our team's benefit? Okay. So we know that this is a kind of a convergy kind of a situation here. I can't see the dog's head. I don't know what your finish is here. Dog comes off of it. There we go. So it's definitely the potential for some converging odor on those two. Here's another example, and I know that you explained to me that's not where odor is, but like this right here is really important to me. I don't feel like I could leave this lobby or even go into these other rooms if I hadn't checked that. It's just the way in which I search. Once I put it to my back, I don't anticipate coming there again. Now, there's not a lot of visual information I have here to work with in there. I do know that you end up with a successful hide inside of there, and that's really good. I'm happy about that. I hope that it worked out well and everything in there. So we can see the doorstop from here. We can see the doorstop that you're going to end up, I guess, not having success with. And let's watch it play forward. I don't think that you necessarily did anything wrong. This is the one that I would actually say, I'm not too tore up about it. I will say that the dog didn't check it. And again, me being the way that I am, I would not have passed that if I caught this visually, just like this can, if I caught this visually, and I wouldn't have gone past it until I knew there was odor there or not. But it is something that would be very easy to overlook. I know back in there isn't a whole lot that I can see, but I can also start talking again about this water fountain. And you do encourage the dog to get into the area, but the dog never really checks it. Let's watch. You say, hey, check here. Dog's like, nah, I'm not going to. So that comes, there's some deep water to discuss there too. But so it comes down into a question of your dog's odor threshold. Okay, so I've written about that and I've talked about it. Unfortunately, I can't get into the depths of it, within the time slot we have here. But basically, and I think you said that some other teams struggled with it. Basically, the question is this: depending on what the odor is doing, okay, how much target odor does your dog need to flip that switch, to send that scale over to the other side, saying, hey, I've encountered odor, and then do something about it. And these fountains don't seem to have those big fans on them, those condenser fans like the old-fashioned ones did. But let's just say, for example, the odor cone is falling a little bit and then traveling up. It wouldn't be until your dog got pretty close that it would catch any odor. So, in the path that your dog took, if the odor is staying in that cubby area, it's not going to get it. So the dog did, respect your wishes and get in the area, but never really checked it. Right. And just so some dogs can do that, right? And some odors do allow for it. If the odor were traveling outward, like this, or let's do better. Let's draw you a sort of a cone. Let's say odor was doing something like this, then certainly getting in this area would have been sufficient and your dog would have picked it up. But if it's not doing that, then you need greater detail. And then also, and I've talked about this in other training sessions too, is that, knowing your dog's spatial orientation in regards to odor threshold. So I use this team all the time. I know a team, they've actually got 3 dogs and all very successful. And one of their dogs would be very successful at that hide doing something like this. One of their other dogs would not, and it wouldn't be until the dog did this that they would have been successful. Same handler, same training principles and processes, 2 different dogs. By the way, same breed dog. They're both labs with really nice genetic lines. One dog, its odor threshold is good enough or low enough that the further distance is okay. The other one, it needs to detail it. And so the handler knows this, because we've tested it in training. And so that handler knows that if on the other dog, if they don't do this, then that fountain's not actually checked. And, not knowing what the odor's doing there, that's possible. So anyways, just a little explanation for you. Let's move along. And for example, I wouldn't feel like those door seams were checked. And I know there was an odor in there, but as a dog does like this, this door, if there was odor on these doors, you weren't going to get it. Not in that sort of loose position. Now, coming up really soon, something interesting happens, and it makes me think pretty hard, and I'm asking you to think about it too, and it's right there. So here we are 4 minutes into the search, and you go ahead and hook up your leash. I want to start by saying I don't disagree with you. I think that it was a good thing to do. I have my suspicions as to why you did it. Certainly I can't from here certainly know your mind, but I've seen countless searches with countless dogs, and I have a feeling, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason you hooked up online is because you wanted to make sure that certain things in this room got checked. Now that you're back here and you're at 4 minutes, you're like, we got to get to some stuff we didn't get to before. And so that's probably why you went back online. So what I would ask you to consider is, if your intent was in fact to get a little bit more detailed about this room, maybe it might have been beneficial to do that earlier on and not need to do, not need to come back. However, I do feel like when you hooked up online, you did unintentionally, did intentionally create a little bit of an issue. Also, by the way, now that you're online and you have the ability to work some control stuff, this still goes unchecked. Unfortunately, there's nothing there. So speaking about the particular, the sort of issue that ends up coming up is I suspect that maybe you guys don't search areas like this online a lot because the dog changes. When you hook up online, I see a different type of dog. And historically, with many teams, what I see with that is that comes from the dog is not accustomed to being guided or directed in mindful searches in such a way, and so the dog sees it as maybe an obedience practice, or as sometimes corrections. The leash gets all tangled up in the podium thing, and now the dog's a little bit confused. And what happens is that when you go to come out and go that way, see how the dog is now looking at you, not really searching, whereas the dog had been searching heavily before. And then it really shows right here because your dog gets into interest, and we see this tension in the line, right? This line is taunt. And the dog's looking at you going, what do you want me to do? And that ends up having you to call it. And I know you're unsure. We can see the uncertainty there, and it's a shame, that you got to know, and I'm sorry about that. But anyways, having seen the dog search earlier, we can go right back to that room. Seeing that dog work, well, there's the no. Seeing that dog work that room offline, it was a different type dog, which is why oftentimes people cut loose of the leash whenever they have the option. My strategy is slightly different. My strategy is that I would strongly encourage you to just, maybe get better at, or more, at least, maybe more experience at searching online, so that, because he's got a wagging tail, he's moving, all that kind of stuff, so that when you do end up online, long line or short line, whatever it is, you don't run into this kind of stuff. So because it takes practice, right? There's no replacement for leash time. It's not something anybody can sell to you or give to you. You have to actually, have leash time for it to happen. So I could be wrong. Certainly let me know if that's not the case. But it just looks like a different dog when you get online. The other thing is that, and this is something that I had mentioned before in the one previous video we've done, and that is that in this stage of the hunt, we found that odor over there originally. We found the one in the bathroom. We found this stuff over here. So that's a total of, was that 1, 2, 3, 4 hides that we found. But at this, let's see here, right around at this stage, the dog goes for a considerable amount of time without finding anything. And if the dog hasn't built that level of search endurance, with that level of expectation that we could be hunting for that period of time and not finding anything, some dogs will check out on you. I know this. I've seen it, certainly thousands of times. Dogs that haven't experienced that will kind of, give up the hunt, as it were. They go, well, we're not finding anything. I'm just going to check out. I think maybe that possibly combined with the addition of the line may have changed the mood in the latter part of the search. The reason that you get the no towards that end on the table is because of two things. Well, maybe more than two, but basically what we have done is we've changed the mood of the search. We have the high tension on the line, and additionally your body position. So you have a dog where you guys aren't, maybe 100% clear all the time on what the dog gets paid for. Now the dog is looking at you and you're looking at the dog, and both of you are going, I don't know. And so, in fear of pulling off of odor and attempting to find everything, you went ahead and called it. So what is the difference between what interest looks like and target odor looks like? And then also, did we see any of that pre-hunt or that pre-finish type stuff? Let's look again really quickly. You ask the dog to check the table. It shows some interest, turns and looks at you. Tension on the line. No. Right, there you go. So there we have it. Cool, fun search. I think you told me there were 7 hides and there was 5 minutes. I see that you guys found 4, and you got 2 no's. I couldn't see much back in the one bathroom, but it sounds like you had success there. We talked about the water fountain. It's really a question of where was the odor, how was it behaving, and did your dog actually get close enough to encounter it? I suspect it's probably a combination of not highly available odor, and I don't feel like the dog really detailed it either. And then you have the 2 no's, as we discussed. It's a question of what is it that you're paying for? What's the difference between interest and target odor? And like I said, even if you're not into training or shaping finished behaviors, it's nice to at least investigate that and, try to maybe feel super confident about those calls when you do go to make them, because it always is so much more fun to search when you're feeling confident. Right, there you go. That's what I think about that. Pretty cool search, lots of fun, not a lot of clutter. Pretty easy to break those searches down and hit all of the targets of value. And, congratulations to you on the 4 successes, and, just being there and working it out and having a good time with your dog. So thanks again, and I hope to talk to you again soon.